Am I wrong for telling my sister-in-law no one cares that she's pregnant? See, this is one of those posts where it's like, duh, you're the asshole, but then when I read it, it's like, oh, never mind, watch. Backstory. My cousin, 33 female, who I'll call Mary, lost her husband, 32 male, and 2 of her 3 children, 3 female and 9-month-old male, in a car accident last week. Her and her daughter, 5, are as you would expect, and it's just heartbreaking. Well, today was the funeral, and my brother's wife announced her pregnancy the second they arrived at our house this morning, and we were like, okay, congratulations, but please keep it on the down low for today. Well, when we arrived at the church, she kept making gagging sounds and rubbing her stomach, saying, I, as a mom, can't imagine what she's going through. They have no kids, so people would look at her and she'd tell them she was pregnant. Afterwards, at my aunt's house, my sister-in-law kept making everything about her. Like someone was in the bathroom and my sister-in-law would loudly say, pregnant lady needs to pee. She literally told my cousin to give her seat so the lady with the baby could rest her feet. I ignored her until she came to Mary, stuck out her flat belly and said, me and Isaac just found out I was pregnant, and honestly, we are beside ourselves. It could happen to us. Mary broke down crying. I snapped. Who says that to a woman who just literally lost 2 babies? I said loudly to my sister-in-law, no one gives an F you're pregnant. Look around. It's not just 1, but 2 babies' funerals, not to mention the love of Mary's life. Like, I knew you were an attention seeker, but for fuck's sake, you took the test 4 days ago. Just leave. Good for you. She did leave in tears, and my brother called me a fat, bitter bitch. Oh, what the fuck? I've gotten phone calls from my brother and my sister-in-law's family calling me the world of names because I made a pregnant woman cry. Mary and my aunt thank me, but if I'm being honest, I feel bad about causing a scene. So please put me in my place if I'm wrong. Her husband, your brother should have pulled her aside and be like, yo, what the fuck are you doing? Shut the fuck up. But if he don't do it, you can do it. So, little update. I found out this morning that my brother and my sister-in-law harassed my cousin with phone calls for her to talk to me about yesterday. My aunt gave both of them an earful and then made my cousin turn off her phone. My brother and my sister-in-law were at my parents' house trying to get their side in when I arrived. They both came at me screaming and yelling about my sister-in-law's feelings, and she couldn't miscarry from the stress I caused her. Sister-in-law said if I didn't lose my attitude and apologize, I'd never be in their child's life. Oh, brother, step up, brother. I told her I didn't care, and if she was going to use the kid as a weapon, I didn't want to be in their life anyway. Things got heated, and my father ended up kicking out my brother and my sister-in-law. So yeah, all this drama at a time, we should be there for one another. I'm so sorry you have to go through that, but your sister-in-law's fucking psycho. Your brother's whipped.
Storytime about how my parents caught me selling my undies online. Disclaimers is not my story time. I'm sending me on Instagram. I'm extremely spoiled. My family is extremely rich. This allows me to buy whatever I want. The problem is my dad caught me sneaking out of my window, so he grounded me for 2 months and took away my allowance. And my allowance is a lot. My dad usually gave me $150 a week. With that money, I would go to Starbucks every single day before school, and I would also treat my friends to Starbucks every now and then, more like every day. My friends and I would go to restaurants and have fancy dinners and lunches, and I also had a car. I would also go shopping almost every single Friday with my friends. I would get manicures and pedicures, and I could basically buy myself whatever I wanted just by asking my dad for the money. But now that I was grounded, that was not going to happen. By the way, I'm 20 now, but this was 3 years ago, so I was 17 when all of this happened. I can confidently say that I was like the queen bee in my high school. Number 1, I was in the cheerleading squad. Number 2, I was super pretty popular and had lots of money. Therefore, everyone wanted to hang out with me. I knew that I needed to maintain my status and also the life that I had become accustomed to. Not being able to go to Starbucks every single morning really made me depressed. That probably made you roll your eyes, but I said what I said. Now, there was no way I was gonna go get a job somewhere. You would never catch me working at a cafe or a restaurant or something like that. So I knew I had to start making my own money online somehow. I did some research and found out that people would sell pictures and video of their feet. So I signed up for this stupid website and decided to do it. The problem was that by the end of the week, I had only made $46. This was clearly not enough. So I did some more research and found out that you could actually sell your undies. So I took my last $200, went to Victoria's Secret and stocked up on undies. And this is when things get really fun. Part 2 is up. Part 2 of how my parents caught me selling my undies online. Disclaimers is not my story time. I said me on Instagram. So I took my last $200, went to Victoria's Secret and stocked up on undies. I signed up to this website and within a week I had about 80 orders. So that means in 1 week I sold $2,000 worth of my own underwear. This is when I realized that I could charge way more than I had been. So I doubled the price and the following week I made $4,000. So here's the first mistake I made. I decided to tell my girlfriends about it and they decided to sign up and start selling their own undies. After a month, all of my friends and I were selling our undies, and we were all making bank. This also meant that we were spending lots of money. I started buying designer handbags and shoes. One of my friends even put a down payment to a car, and her parents started asking her tons of questions. And so did mine. Part 3 is up. Part 3 of how my parents caught me selling my undies online. Disclaimers are not my story time, but send me on Instagram. When my parents realized that I was buying all these designer bags and shoes, they started asking me questions. I was strong and I kept my mouth shut. Now my friends, on the other hand, who were also selling their undies, one of them got questioned by her parents and she gave up all the information. She even told her parents that I was the mastermind behind everything and that I had told all the other girls to start selling their undies, which was true. So it was official, I had been caught. Of course, my mom's friend runs straight over to my house and she starts spilling all the beans to my parents. My dad and mom came straight to my room and started rummaging through everything. That's when they find all my purses, my shoes, had stacks of cash in my drawers, and under my mattress. All of my friends got grounded, but my parents decided to take it a step further. They were so disgusted with me that they actually kicked me out of the house. But the good news is, I had a lot of money, so I got myself a really nice apartment. So jokes on my parents. With all the money that I made, I decided to start a side hustle. I have my own employees and run my business from my house. My parents and I still talk, and my dad's even invested into my new company. When I look back at what I did, I do feel shame, but at the same time, I've become so successful from that money. What should I invest in next?
Storytime about how my husband accidentally told me that he was cheating on me. So just some background information. My husband and I got engaged 2 years ago. And this whole situation happened a month after we got married. So fast forward, it's a Sunday morning. Well, usually every week on Sunday, I clean the whole house. So I woke up, went into the bathroom to take my ring off, and I could not get it off. Mind you, I had gained a little bit of weight since my husband and I got engaged. Anyways, I tried butter, I tried soap, I tried everything, even oil. So after trying to get it off for an hour straight, my finger was 3 times bigger than it usually is. So at this point, I'm really scared that I'm going to have to get it cut off. Because 1, I didn't want to ruin it, and 2, it was really expensive. So I call my husband and he's like, "Oh, call your dad. Firefighters always know what to do." So I called my dad and thank God he lived 5 minutes away because he drove over really quickly. Like for part 2. Part 2 of how my husband accidentally told me that he was cheating on me. So like I said, my dad lived 5 minutes away, so he just rushed over to my house. And we tried a few more things to get it off. We tried Windex, we tried the dental floss, none of it was working. So my dad told me that we were going to have to cut it off with pliers. So he comes over with the pliers, cuts the ring off. Well, a few days later, I had taken it to the same place that we got it to get the band fixed. Or replaced. While I was there, I decided to get it appraised, just for insurance reasons. So a few days later, I go and pick up my ring, and when I get home, I look at the appraisal. It was not the same one that I had picked out in the store. It looked exactly like it, but there was like a $20,000 price difference. So right now, I'm like, what the fuck? I'm not mad about the money part. I'm more mad that my husband lied to me. I was more upset about the fact that he had lied to me. So I had made dinner reservations for the next night, so that way I could hopefully bring up the conversation about it, like for part 3. Part 3 of how my husband accidentally told me that he was cheating on me. So like I said, I had made reservations for him and I to go out to dinner so that way I could hopefully spark up the conversation about it. So when we finally sat down, I had started up the conversation. I had told him that when I took my ring in to get it fixed, I also got it appraised. And his face immediately changed after that, but he wasn't saying anything. He was like, "Oh, okay, how did that go?" So at this point, I was tired of beating around the bush, and I was like, "Why wouldn't you just tell me if we were having money troubles?" And he was like, "What do you mean? We're not having any money troubles. I'm fine." One thing about my husband is that he is very wealthy, and he takes pride in the fact that he is very wealthy. So obviously, me right there kind of questioning his wealth, he fucked up and told me the truth. He was like, "Well, I'm going to be honest with you. I accidentally gave the ring that I was supposed to give you to a girl I was seeing at the time, and I just never got around to replacing yours." So fast forward to present day, I am currently moving all of my stuff out of our house and filing for divorce.
Am I wrong for not attending my sister's wedding because my husband is not invited? Let me start by saying this. I do understand my husband's behavior is inappropriate, but like all of us, he's not perfect, and I took vows with him to stand by him and accept him as a whole person, including his flaws. Overall, he's a good husband and I love him despite this one issue. One issue could be something very big too. So, my husband has a kink for urinating on himself in public. What the fudge? Ew! I think it's the humiliation aspect that gets him all. So sometimes, not every time we get together with my family, he will pee his pants. But overall, it's not really that disruptive. He just stands up and says something like, "Oh no, I peed myself." Then he goes to the bathroom and changes. I always bring a change of pants and underwear for him in case this happens. And when he gets back, we just move on and don't talk about it. Of course, we don't want people to know my husband is doing this for a kink. So we've told my family he has a medical condition that causes him to not have full control of his bladder. I told him that the reason he doesn't wear adult diapers is that he's ashamed of needing diapers at his age. So he's basically in denial that he needs them and refuses to wear them. Well, now my sister is getting married and she says my husband can't come because she doesn't want him disrupting my wedding by peeing his pants. I told her it was unfair to exclude him over a medical condition condition he can't help, which is true as far as she knows, but she said it's his own choice to refuse to wear adult diapers, so it is his fault. I told her it's her wedding and she can invite who she wants, but if my husband isn't invited, I'm not coming. He loves my family and I know it really hurts him to be excluded from the wedding just because of a kink he can't help having. He's been crying and saying he feels disgusting for having this kink, but that he can't control himself, and now my family doesn't want him around. I know it would really hurt him if I just left him home and went to the wedding by myself. He told me it's my choice to go if I want and that he won't be mad, but I know he'd be really sad if I went. I love my sister and family, but my husband is my life partner, so he's always my number one priority above anyone else. And I believe I should stand by him and support him rather than choosing my family over him. So I told my sister I won't make it to the wedding, and now she's extremely angry with me, saying I'm a bad sister because I won't be there to support her. She's marrying a woman, so she also said it makes me look like I'm homophobic if I don't show up to support their union. I told her I'd love to come if my husband is invited, but she said she can't stand the thought of him disrupting the ceremony or reception by peeing his pants and announcing it. I told her how much it hurts my husband that he's excluded, but she doesn't care. I do feel bad that it hurts her that I won't be there, but he's my husband.
Storytime about one of the most embarrassing things that has ever happened to me in high school. So a little background information. I was in my freshman year of high school. Well, spring break was coming up. Well, the whole year, my friend and I hadn't been to one single party. So we decided that we wanted to try and go to a party every single day of spring break, which was about to be super difficult because we had to worry about my strict-ass parents and my neighbors. A little background info on my neighbor. My neighbor is this girl who's in my same grade and she literally hates my guts. I don't know why, but literally anything that I do, she'll go and she'll tell her mom, and then her mom will tell my mom, because my mom and her mom are best friends. But before we know it, Saturday comes around, and we go back to school on Monday. We did not make it to one single party. Well, later that night, we found out that one of our friends was throwing one. So around 11 o'clock, everybody's sleeping, and I walk out my back door, hop over my fence, and I start heading towards the road where my friend was going to be parked. You know, who do I see fucking sitting outside on their porch reading a fucking book? My fucking neighbor. Life for part 2. Part 2 about the most embarrassing thing that ever happened to me in high school. So like I said, the bitch that I hate is sitting out on her porch reading a fucking book at 11 o'clock at night. So I crouch down so she couldn't see me. I run to the car and my friend and I finally go to the party. Well, we get to that party and it's really boring, so we decided to go to a different one. And the party that we were about to go through was being thrown by the kid that I really liked. So I start hanging out with him when we get there. I'm drinking a lot, having so much fun, and I really have to go to the bathroom. And I didn't know where anything was at all, so I grabbed my friend and we're looking around everywhere for the bathroom. Because when I asked him, he was super drunk and really couldn't explain to me where the bathroom was. So we were pretty much left to fend for ourselves. But we ended up not being able to find a bathroom, and this is where I had to improvise. So my friend and I go to the laundry room, and we see the litter box in there for the cat. Well, at this point, I was desperate, so I just went in the litter box. Well, 30 minutes later, the cops show up to the party. And everybody had to hurry up and leave because we did not want to get underages. Like for part 3. Part 3 about the most embarrassing thing that ever happened to me in high school. So like I said, I went in the litter box and then the cops showed up. We all ran because we didn't want to get underages. I was able to sneak back into my house without anybody knowing. But when I get to school on Monday, everybody's talking about the party. And apparently the kid that I liked who threw the party, his parents didn't know that he threw one at all. And this was like during first period. So I went to text him and ask him if he was grounded because we were supposed to hang out the next day. And I realized that I am blocked. So I'm thinking, what the fuck? Why does he have me blocked? So I told my friend that he blocked me, and she goes, it's probably because he saw what you did in the laundry room. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, there's no fucking way that he knows. Because there was a door that led to the outside in the laundry room, there were cameras in there. So everybody saw this video of me. People were posting it on their Finstas, posting it on their Snapchat stories. It was so fucking embarrassing. Not to mention the bitch that I hate who lives next door showed my parents the fucking video, and I was grounded for fucking 4 months.
Storytime about how my high school principal tried to date me after I graduated. TW, if you think this is gross, don't watch. And disclaimer, this is not my story time. It's been 10 years since this happened, but when I was in high school, I was really popular. I was in the cheerleading squad, the badminton team, the volleyball team, and drama club. All the teachers knew me and I got along with almost all the students. I never had any problems with girls or guys. My high school principal was a huge history buff, and so was I. One day I went to his office and asked him if I could start a history club. He was really impressed by this and he said yes. I started asking students if they wanted to join, and mostly it was only boys. And these were the boys that I knew had a crush on me, but I made a promise to my parents that I would focus solely on school and not boys. So that meant no boyfriends for me. And I was totally fine with that. I wasn't boy crazy or anything. I really just wanted to get into a good college and make my parents proud. After I formed the club, the principal asked me if he could sit in on some of the sessions. I said, of course. Our history club would get together every Wednesday, and he would always show up without fail. I mean, obviously, I thought that he was interested in history, and he just wanted to share this experience with us, but clearly I was wrong. After a few weeks, things were getting a little strange. When it was my turn to read, I would always notice him staring at me. And he also brought up the fact that there were only boys in the club. I explained to him that they probably just had a crush on me and that at least it was a way to get them into the club. He told me I needed to find girls because I was too much of a distraction for the boys. But the way that he said it just sounded like he was really jealous. I did my best to get girls in the club, but literally nobody wanted to join. After a few days, I realized that maybe the best thing for me was just to cancel the club. I was already in so many other clubs, and I didn't want to sacrifice my grades. I basically told the guys that we weren't going to have the club anymore, and they all said that was totally fine. But when I told the principal, he flipped out. He started yelling at me and told me that if I didn't keep the club going, that I would never make it in life. He said I wasn't being responsible and that I was letting down the club. So then I was basically forced into continuing the club. But then things got even stranger. He started showing up to every single get-together. And every time that it was over, he would ask me if he could walk me to my car. I mean, at first I thought he was just doing it so that I could be careful, I guess. But we were still on school property and I'm pretty sure nothing was gonna happen to me. That's when he started asking me if I had a boyfriend or if I liked any boys. Part 2 is up. Part 2 of how my high school principal tried to date me after I graduated. Trigger warning, if you find this subject gross, please don't watch. And disclaimer, this is not my story time. That's when my principal started asking me if I was dating any boys or if I had any crushes on boys. I obviously felt very uncomfortable when he asked me this, so I simply answered no. Then he told me that I could be honest with him. That's when I told him that I made my parents a promise because I was so close to graduating high school and avoid any distractions like boys. That's when he said that I was an amazing woman and that he wished more of the female students were like me. I quickly got in my car and went home. By the way, I was 2 months away from graduating from high school. Now this is when things start to get really weird. I started seeing him around everywhere in school. Our school is pretty big, but I kept bumping into him everywhere. Every time I would see him, he would be like, "Ho ho, are you stalking me?" I would laugh it off and continue walking. One day after history club, he asked me to come to his office with him. He said that he had a surprise for me. He took me to his office and gave me a book on history. I thanked him and tried to leave as quickly as possible, but then he said, "Don't you like it?" So I stood there having to pretend that I was happy that he gave me this book, when in actuality, it made me really uncomfortable. That's when he said that he had seen me in the library reading a book on World War II, and that he just wanted to surprise me with the same book. So this was already letting me know 2 things. Number 1, he's watching me around school and at the library. And number 2, I'm not noticing when he's watching me. I was so creeped out, but I managed to keep my cool. I said thank you again and basically ran away. For the rest of that week, I tried to avoid him as much as I could. I didn't go anywhere near his office, and I avoided the library, which was one of my favorite places in the school. At this point, graduation was only a week away. I was totally wrapped up in my studies that I actually forgot about the principal. Until one day I get a friend request from him on Facebook. At first I thought it was weird, but then I accepted because I figured, well, I'm graduating, so I'm not really going to be seeing him anymore. 5 minutes after I accepted his friend request, I get this really long message from him praising me, saying all these great things about me. I didn't know how to respond, so I simply said thanks. Finally, the day of graduation came and I was forced to see him face to face. That's when he told me that he actually had another gift for me. That's when he hands me an envelope with a blank check. He had the biggest smile on his face. I told him I couldn't accept it and he got mad. Part 3 of how my high school principal tried to date me after I graduated. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. After he hands me the blank check, I look at it and tell him that I simply cannot accept it. That's when he gets really angry, snatches the check from me, and tells me that he'll see me later. After the graduation ceremony, I was so happy and I was with my family. That's when he walks up behind me and asks me to keep the check. My family is watching this whole thing go down, by the way. I look at him and say thank you, but no. He then introduces himself to my family. But of course, he doesn't bring up the whole check thing. We all say goodbye and my family and I go have dinner. That very night, he sends me a message on Facebook again, saying that he shouldn't have given me the check, and he felt like he had crossed the line. I actually felt really bad, so I replied asking him to not feel bad. A week later, I get a text message from him. He said that he took the liberty of looking up my phone number, and that he actually really wanted to speak to me. He asked if we could meet up for a coffee, and I said yes, unfortunately. We meet up at the coffee shop, and as soon as we sit down, he starts to confess his feelings for me. He said that I was basically his dream girl, and that all he wanted was a wife like me. And he also asked me if I would ever consider dating him. I was actually too stunned to speak. As soon as he realized I wasn't saying yes, he asked me not to say anything, got up and left. I ran home and told my parents everything. My parents were really angry. My dad went straight to the cops. The cops told my dad that they had complaints from other students. He apparently did the same thing to them and asked them out once they graduated. And guess what? One of them said yes. The cops even investigated him after.
I live with a roommate and her 3-year-old child. My roommate is a 4th-year medical student and is really struggling, having to balance with the child, intense study workload, chores and part-time jobs to afford rent, babysitter and necessities. On the day of the biggest exam of her entire degree, her babysitter canceled last minute. She was absolutely frantic and hysterically called every one of her contacts to help. Of course, she asked me. She has asked me to babysit before and I always give her a stern no. It's not the time that I need to spend since I'm perfectly fine with swapping around chores, but the principle that I must be responsible for the child for the duration. For example, if the child hurts himself, no matter how badly, it would be on me. And I refuse to take the responsibility for something like that, so I always refuse to babysit. She begged and begged me, and since the journey to her exam is almost 2 hours away and she needed to go now, she just said, I don't fucking care, and left the house. Frankly, I found this quite disrespectful as it's trying to push me to babysit without my consent. Right after she left, I grabbed my coat and also left. She was starting her car when she saw me and asked what I was doing. I told her that I was going to watch a movie. I lied. I just refused to babysit without consent. Her eyes dropped and I could see the tears forming as she started begging me more to help her. I still explained the same thing, that it's not the time or effort, but the responsibility. She told me that she would sign a waiver that states that I'm 100% not responsible no matter what happens. I'm not an expert in law, but I'm not sure if a waiver is even legally enforceable. Even so, it still carries a responsibility risk, so I stand my ground. Eventually, she became quiet and started sobbing while hitting herself. I, as respectfully as I can, asked if there's anything I can help with that does not involve babysitting the child. She told me to fuck off, so I did, and I actually went to watch a movie. It's been a few weeks and she still absolutely refuses to communicate with me. She still does her share of chores and we were pretty separate beforehand, so it wasn't that much of a difference in day-to-day life. I do feel pretty bad since I've seen from the past 2 years we've lived together that she has almost no free time and always sleeps later than me and wakes up earlier than me to cram a little bit of extra study time. I know the exam meant a lot to her and missing the exam might jeopardize her entire degree of 4 years. It sucks that her efforts for the past 2 years have gone on the drain, but that's not an excuse to cross my bottom line. Am I the asshole for forcing my roommate to miss her final exam that she spent 2 years studying? So my daughter, 16, has had a best friend named Mare since she was 9 years old. They were so close that Mare had a key to our house and everything. Sometimes she would come over when my daughter wasn't even around because that's how close she was to the rest of our family. She even went with us to family reunions. Well, recently, Mare got a boyfriend. She would bring him around our house sometimes and I could tell that my daughter had a crush on him. But I assumed it was a small innocent crush and nothing would come of it. Well, one day, Mare pulled into our driveway like a crazy woman and accidentally hit our garage. When I came out, she had boxes of stuff and was shaking so bad that she could barely walk. When I looked inside the boxes, they were all my daughter's stuff from over the years. I'm talking about toys that she still had from when they were 9. I didn't know what happened, but I could tell that she was distraught, so I helped her get all the boxes out of the car and pulled her inside for a cup of tea. After about 15 minutes, she said, "Did you know?" Turns out that my daughter had slept with her boyfriend multiple times and that she found out by a voicemail my daughter left on her boyfriend's phone and Mare saw and listened to it. When I confronted my daughter, she had no defense. I asked her what was next and she said that she was going to get with him because if she didn't, they ruined 2 relationships for nothing. I was and still am appalled, and that was 5 months ago. Soon my family and I are going on a family vacation and all my other children's partners are invited. However, I told my daughter that hers wasn't. She blew up at me and then cried asking when I'm ever going to forgive her. I told her it would have been one thing if she had slept with her boyfriend once. It still would have been terrible, but at least she could have learned from her mistake and grown. Instead, she slept with him multiple times, and the fact that she's still dating him proves that she isn't sorry for what she did. My husband says that this treatment of her relationship is only going to cause strain on our own, but I just can't believe how selfish and cruel she's become. I've spent thousands of dollars on this trip. I think I have the right not to invite people I don't want there. And I'm sorry if 5 months of her new boyfriend isn't going to erase the 7 years of friendship with Mare. I still talk to Mare sometimes and she's doing a lot better now, but when it first happened, her mental health was ruined. And even as she's doing better and going to therapy, the mental effects of this level of betrayal is probably going to last years to fully get over. She says she's still hurt by what happened. Every time I look at my daughter, I'm honestly disgusted. This is not the type of person I raised her to be, and she's not sorry for any of it. I refuse to walk around on eggshells around my daughter and her boyfriend for a vacation I'm paying for and chaperoning for. Just seeing them together makes me sick. Am I disgusted? I meant her decision making, not her as a whole, because despite everything, she's still my child. Also, I've learned to be cordial around the boyfriend when she's talking about him, but anything beyond that I've been struggling with. Am I the asshole for not accepting my child's relationship?
I never really saw you coming until you turned me around. I used to think I was nothing, but look at this love we found. So give me your hand, I just took mine. No, I don't ever wanna see you cry. Oh yeah, no more tears. Oh yeah, no more tears. Take that chance, we'll be fine. No, I don't ever wanna see you cry. Oh yeah, no more tears. Oh yeah, no more.
After 18 years of marriage, I just found out that my children are not mine. My wife, Kelly, and I have known each other for over 20 years and I have been married to her for 18. We have 17-year-old twins, a boy and a girl. And I found out that they aren't mine 2 days ago. My kids got those ancestry tests for the family and we found out that I am not their father. Kelly and I met each other as coworkers at a job right out of college. We both were very ambitious, so after working for a couple of years, we decided to start our own business. We fell in love, and a year after starting our business, we got married. A couple of months into our marriage, we had a massive fight over the direction we wanted to take our business in, and I left our home. She came to me a couple of weeks later and we compromised. We've been inseparable ever since. Kelly got pregnant around that time. We've been through thick and thin. Our business has been through several hardships, but we weathered them together. We were always there for each other. We could always depend on one another, and I loved her so much. She was a part of me, and I couldn't imagine a life without her. I trusted her absolutely until this happened. Kelly has been crying and apologizing constantly. She told me that during the time we had that fight at the start of our marriage, she got drunk one night and slept with a random guy, and that she has not cheated on me since. The betrayal has left me disoriented. I told Kelly I needed some time to process this, and I'm currently staying at a hotel. I don't know what I'm even doing anymore. The last 2 days have been a blur. I feel like a zombie, completely unable to feel or process anything. I don't intend to abandon my kids. I might not be their father, but I'm still their dad, and I love them dearly. My thoughts are a mess, so I'm writing this down to help me process. Kelly has always been a great wife and an excellent business partner. I don't know if I'll be able to look at her the same again or if I'll be the same person. I don't know how to move forward or if I even can.
Imagine your father asking you to help him install his cellar door only to be locked inside by him for the next 24 years of your life. Elizabeth Fritzl was freshly 18 and ready to leave the nest when one day in 1984, her father, Joseph Fritzl, asked her to help him install the door in the basement of their home in Austria. Unaware of his horrific intentions, Elizabeth obliged. As they finished and she was heading out, he suddenly covered her face in a cloth soaked in ether. For the next 24 years, Elizabeth had to endure a suffering that no one could fathom. Joseph convinced his wife, other children, and their neighbors that Elizabeth ran away and joined some religious cult. They believed it because she had previously run away and stayed with a friend for 20 days when she was 15 to get away from her father's abuse, which started when she was 11. Police found her after those 20 days and brought her back home. If it wasn't terrible enough being forced to endure the blazing summers and catching rats with her bare hands, she was also repeatedly abused by her own father over the years of captivity. Initially, he tied her up with an iron chain so that she could barely move, but it caused trouble during the horrendous activities he put her through, and he removed it months later. For the first 5 years in the basement, she was all alone. He assaulted her at least 3,000 times in those 24 years, which resulted in her birthing 7 children. She gave birth to all her children with no medical help for almost 12 years. Joseph provided her with just a disinfectant, a dirty pair of scissors, and a book on childbirth. One of her children died prematurely due to difficulty breathing just 3 days after his birth in 1996. When the baby started to come, Elizabeth tried to end it all, but looking at her kids, she had purpose to live after the initial years of being alone. Joseph held control over her by threatening to end the lives of her and her children if they ever tried to escape. He would also turn off the lights in the basement for days on end so that she'd be in complete darkness. 3 of her children were in the basement with her, while the other 3 mysteriously appeared on the doorstep of Joseph and Rosemary, Elizabeth's mother, as per his planning. He doctored letters to Rosemary from Elizabeth saying that she was well but couldn't take care of the children. One day, Elizabeth's oldest daughter, Kirsten, who was 19 at the time, became extremely ill and needed immediate hospitalization. This is when Elizabeth pleaded with her father to get Kirsten medical attention. Joseph Fritzl, who had never shown mercy in those 24 years, surprisingly took Kirsten to the hospital. This is when things took a turn. Crime Fanatic Friday, Part 2, the girl enslaved in the basement for 24 years by her own father. When Elizabeth's daughter, Kirsten, arrived at the hospital, the doctors who were attending her became deeply suspicious by her condition. They later alerted police officials who put an appeal in the media and broadcasted repeatedly for Kirsten's mother to come forward with necessary information if they want to save her life. Little did they know, Elizabeth Fritzl, Kirsten's mother, was locked in the basement she had lived in for 24 years, watching the broadcast over and over with her 2 other children. This is when Elizabeth begged her father, Joseph Fritzl, to let her go. He was growing old and saw his powers waning, finding it difficult to maintain both families. He hatched a plan on how to get rid of all of this without too many questions being asked, and told some stories to the hospital staff when he took Elizabeth to see Kirsten. However, they didn't believe his stories, and police questioned Elizabeth in a separate room of the hospital. She recounted the last 24 years being held prisoner by her father, assaulted, beaten, and birthing 7 children by him. In 2009, Joseph Fritzl was arrested and sentenced to life in prison. He suffers from dementia now and was said to be ill in 2019. Elizabeth and her 3 children who were raised by her parents were reunited. They were all given support from a local psychiatric center to help with their deep traumas. She eventually moved to a fortress in a remote Austrian village with her children and changed her name. It has steel fencing, video cameras, CCTV, operated gates, and trees shielding the windows. Her children are now all adults that range in age from 20 to 35. Initially, Elizabeth wanted nothing to do with her mother, Rosemary, thinking that she was part of Joseph's plan and that there was no way she didn't know the truth. But years later, they became friends and see each other often. In 2019, it was reported that Elizabeth found love with her bodyguard. Apparently, everyone from the beginning could see how secure she felt with him.
Am I wrong for asking my boyfriend to charge his family member for fraud? Backstory. I, 27 female, and my boyfriend, 34 male, have been together for 5 years and have worked really hard to save for a house. The house won't be built until the end of 2022. Last week, we received some shocking news when my boyfriend's credit score came back as being bad. There was activity on the statement that was 100% not his and a credit card that has gone into default over the last 6 months. This credit card was originally my boyfriend's, but he swears he closed the account and canceled the card in mid-2019. Long story short, we discovered that a family member that was living with him a few years ago had gotten a hold of the card at some point and has been using the card on and off since 2019. They defaulted on payments in early 2020 but paid this off, then defaulted again in December of last year, and the account is still in default with over $5,000 in owed charges and late fees. The family member had diverted these to their address. My boyfriend had zero knowledge of this as he hasn't had access to the account after he closed it and hasn't been receiving statements or notices from the bank. We are now unable to successfully apply for a bank loan for our house as they won't lend to my boyfriend with his credit the way it is. Our options are to 1. Proceed with fraud investigations and charges in the family member allowing us to prove this is no fault of my boyfriend's and successfully secure the loan. 2. Boyfriend pays the debt and we wait at least 2 years from the payoff date for his credit to regain some loss. Option 2 sets us back at least 3 years in starting a family and our lives as homeowners. This will also not allow my boyfriend to secure a bank loan to start up his own business he's been dreaming of starting for a few years. This has devastated us and put a massive delay in our plans. My boyfriend doesn't like conflict and is going with option 2. He isn't even planning on mentioning anything to the family member. He wants it all to go away and thinks his family member is going through a rough time. I want my boyfriend to proceed with fraud charges and investigation. We have worked too hard to not have our dream house and him owning his own business. So am I the asshole for pushing my opinion on my boyfriend? He said you're both working hard. Why can't you use your credit? If you're saying you guys both work hard, you have all this money, you're 27. You don't got the credit to get a house. I don't think you get it really choice. You don't get to push it. It's not your credit. He said no. Khalas, done. Sucks. My 29 female, husband 32 male of 3 years said something I can't move on from. We have a job that requires us to wake up very early in the morning. That's how we met. He usually wakes up before me and makes me breakfast. He's been doing this since we got married. He's sweet and caring like that. He's also the funniest, genuine, and friendliest person I know. I love him and know that he loves me back. Our relationship has always been stable. Now, I'm not so sure. This morning while we were having breakfast, he calmly asked me to kill him if I ever caught him cheating. I initially brushed it off as a joke and replied, likewise. Then he said that he'd kill me if he found me cheating and he would enjoy it. I didn't know how to react. I just got chills. He's never been like this and I can't imagine him saying things like this. All day at work, I've been thinking, what did I do wrong? Did he read my messages and find something off? Did he see me talking with someone inappropriately? I don't know. What should I say to him? You don't. You listen to your gut and you run away.
Am I the asshole for telling my boyfriend not to spit in our food?
Okay. All right. Okay. Mm-hmm.
We're currently not speaking because of this issue, since I find it gross and my boyfriend can't see my problem with it. I do most of the cooking in our relationship, which I'm fine with. Occasionally, my boyfriend will want to do some cooking together / do some baking. The one thing I cannot stand is a habit he has when it comes to food. If my boyfriend thinks something is too dry or needs a better consistency, he will use his own spit and put it in the food. For example, the other day we were icing homemade cookies and I caught him, quote, thinning out the icing mixture by spitting inside the bowl and mixing it in.
Free me.
And I just find it gross. His reply is to shrug and tell me that I get more of his saliva in my mouth when we kiss anyways. So it shouldn't be a big deal and makes literally no difference. Am I the asshole for not wanting my boyfriend to spit in our food when we cook together?
Are you in your body when you type this?
Am I the asshole for not attending my sister's wedding since my husband is not invited? Let me start by saying I do understand my husband's behavior is inappropriate, but like all of us, he's not perfect, and I took vows to him to stand by him and accept him as a whole person, including his flaws.
Wow, she's really leading it up.
Yeah.
So my husband has for urinating on himself in public. I think I think it's the humiliation aspect. So sometimes, not every time, we get together with my family, he will pee his pants. But overall, it's not really that disruptive. He just stands up and says something like, quote, oh no, I've peed myself. Then he goes to the bathroom and changes. I always bring a change of pants and underwear for him in case this happens. And when he gets back, we just move on and don't talk about it. So we've told my family he has a medical condition that causes him to not have full control of his bladder. I told them the reason he doesn't wear adult diapers is that he's ashamed of needing diapers at his age, so he's basically in denial that he needs them and refuses to wear them. Well, now my sister's getting married, and she says my husband can't come because she doesn't want him disrupting the wedding by peeing his pants. I told him it was unfair to exclude him over a medical condition he can't help, which is true as far as she knows, but she said it's his own choice to refuse to wear adult diapers, so it is his fault. I told her it's her wedding and she can invite who she wants, but if my husband isn't invited, I'm not coming. He loves my family, and I know it really hurts him to be excluded from the wedding just because of a he can't help having. He's been crying, but he can't control himself, and now my family doesn't even want him around. He told me it's my choice to go if I want, and that he won't be mad, but I know he'd be really sad if I went. I love my sister and family, but my husband is my life partner. So I told my sister I won't make it to the wedding, and now she's extremely angry with me, saying I'm a bad sister because I won't be there to support her. She's marrying a woman, so she also said it makes it look like I'm a homophobe if I don't show up to support their union. I told her I'd love to come if my husband is invited, but she said she can't stand the thought of him disrupting the ceremony or reception by peeing his pants and announcing it. I told her how much it hurts my husband that he's excluded, but she doesn't care. I said, fine, but that means I can't come.
He can't control it. Like, he couldn't be like, I'll take the wedding day off. You know what I mean? Just...
That is a good question, and not one I am qualified to answer. I don't know. I think, like, if you get to a certain point of that, like, maybe, like, once you're so far gone in, like...
How are you guys so chill about this?
My wife and I had our first child around 2 months ago. She was home isolated during her entire pregnancy after the 6-month mark because of some pregnancy complications. We had also agreed that the first 2 months after birth, our parents and siblings would be the only ones allowed to visit and see the baby, and our friends and the rest of the relatives could wait. As soon as the baby turned 2 months, my wife started trying to get back into her social life again. Sometimes she'd bring the baby with her, but sometimes she'd expect me to babysit. Whenever I couldn't babysit, she'd call her mom and ask her if she could care for the baby for a few hours. My wife's a great mom and she truly cares for our baby, but it's frustrating how she feels the need to go out the entire time. One day while she was out shopping with a friend of hers, I was babysitting the kid and my mom visited me and asked where my wife was. I told her that she's out with a friend. My mom got very mad about how my wife went out and she told me that I have no backbone for not calling her out and telling her to stay home with the baby. I told my mom that I'd handle it. My mom waited until my wife got back home and she started scolding her. It wasn't a proud moment of me and I really didn't want my mom to get involved, but my wife needed to hear from someone else too. My mom told my wife that she's irresponsible and that she should cut down the meetings with her friends and stay home to care for the kid as a proper mother would. My wife tried to defend herself by saying that I was always out with my friends both during her pregnancy and after she gave birth, but both I and my mom tried to explain how me going out is not the same as her going out. My mom told her that the little walks and coffee hangouts with her friends are over and that she better get used to the fact that her social life will now be limited. It sucks, but that's how it is. I agreed with my mother on all that and my wife is not speaking to me for days. She even sleeps in the guest room now and took the baby's crib there as well. She'll only cook for herself and the baby and not for me. My mother-in-law and sister-in-law have texted me saying I was a huge asshole for this and so was my mom, so I shouldn't be surprised if my wife is acting like that towards me. Am I the asshole for siding with my mother when she and my wife got into an argument? This last week, me and my wife just finished a major project to redo our entire dining room. This included buying an incredibly fancy marble dining table and new dining chairs. My wife is a professional chef and has dreamed since she was a child of having a high-end dining room to host dinner parties in. This project has been one that's been on the back burner for a while now, and last year I got an unexpected bonus that I decided to use to make this dream a reality. Suffice to say, my wife is over the moon. To celebrate this, her parents, my 2 siblings, and my brother's wife are coming over for the dinner party my wife has dreamed of hosting since she was a child. This is all of our immediate family except for my wife's only sibling, her sister, and her husband. The reason for this is simple. My brother-in-law physically cannot attend the party as we have it planned. My brother-in-law is 500 plus pounds. To avoid the whole fat shaming conversation that I know this will bring up, I'll talk about why we didn't invite him. The chairs that we bought cannot support him, and even then, he is unable to sit upright due to his weight for long periods of time. He would require to either sit out in the living room on the couch or to sit in a medical chair that we cannot get into the home. It will not fit through our doors. Him sitting in there would literally defeat the point of hosting a dinner party for our new dining room. There's also the fact that this dinner party would consist of 7 smaller courses, something we know my brother-in-law would not be okay with. There have been incidents in the past where he harassed my wife over serving smaller portions in the past. This goes into a larger issue with him and food that I'm not going to bring up because I don't feel like arguing about it. With all this in mind, when we sent out the invites, we excluded him from the list, but not her sister. When he called asking last night as to why he wasn't invited, I did not lie to him. It was because of his weight and his past actions regarding food and my wife. He lost his mind because we were excluding him because of his weight. He said this is unfair and that we were being bigots. I told him yes, this is about his weight, that this night is about my wife and being able to fulfill her childhood dream, not about accommodating him and his mobility and food issues. This has caused a shitstorm. My wife's sister is now calling me a fatphobic asshole and has gone on Facebook and publicly shamed me and my wife. While my wife and everyone attending the party has told me that we should just ignore it, my friends have told me that I'm a major asshole and an elitist for all of this. Am I the asshole for not inviting my 500+ pound brother-in-law to our dinner party?
Am I the asshole for telling my therapist lies because I suspected she was telling my husband? I started seeing a therapist 6 months ago because I had postpartum depression. At first she really helped me, but then I noticed on 2 occasions my husband mentioned things I hadn't told him. But I had confided in my therapist. Since I had no proof and I didn't want to accuse either one of them, I decided to tell my therapist lies that I knew he would confront me on. And I really wanted to see if I was being delusional or not. The more I lied to her, the more suspicious I became too. Even little things that made my husband look awful was challenged by her and twisted to make him look good. Sounds like something's going on. Am I the asshole for telling my therapist lies because I suspected she was telling my husband? It took a while for him to confront me, but he did. At first, he never believed that I was lying during those sessions, but when I finally convinced him I was, he was furious with me. He said he only wanted to make sure I was okay, and he hadn't been using the therapist to spy on me. I actually have time after the story to share some opinions, and I have a lot of them. First of all, she needs to sue. Second of all, I feel like something weird's going on between the therapist and the husband. I don't want to speculate on someone's relationship, but I do see red flags. Am I the asshole for asking my sister to be a groomswoman? So my 25 male fiance 24 female has never gotten along with my sister 18 female. My fiance has never liked how close I am with my sister, and it's been a cause of a few arguments. I proposed to my fiance Sarah a few months ago and things have been going smoothly. In fact, I would say our relationship has never been better. A few days ago, Sarah listed to me all the people she wanted as bridesmaids, and not surprisingly, my sister wasn't one of them. She said she was planning on asking them in a few more months to be in our wedding. Sarah then asked me if I knew who I wanted as a groomsman. Am I the asshole for asking my sister to be a groomswoman? I listed a few friends and then said I wanted my sister to be one of my groomsmen. This made Sarah upset, and she said that it wasn't traditional for a woman to be a groomsman and that it would embarrass her. I explained to her that my sister was one of the most important people in my life and she was going to be in our wedding. Period. This made Sarah even more upset, and she accused me of trying to ruin her wedding day. She then locked herself in the bathroom. It's been days since this and we haven't spoken at all. Family reached out to me and asked me not to include my sister in the wedding at all and that Sarah should be the most important woman in my life.